Hello, everyone. I'm the Reverend Will Rose Moore. I'm assistant curate at St John the Baptist Church in Loughton in Chelmsford Diocese. I'm also a PhD student under the supervision of Karen O'Donnell and David Toombs at Westcott House in the Cambridge Theological Federation, looking at masculinities and constructive theology, particularly trauma theology. I'm also a research associate for the Centre for the Study of Bible and Violence, and I'm the author of Boys Be Boys and Other Myths, Unraveling Biblical Masculinities, which was published by SCM Press in 2022. Excitingly, I've literally just signed a contract with SCM Press to edit a collection on trauma and masculinities in church and theology, which will be published next year in 2026. But most importantly, I contributed a chapter in this book, Behold the Men. Now, you may have said this a lot today, but I don't think I've seen it said enough. This book is significantly important. This book is groundbreaking. As someone who has been publishing and working in this field and continues to work in the field of masculinities and theology, I cannot overstate how monumental this book is. It is the first of its kind, a collection of theologies, critical, constructive theologies of masculinities that survey a whole host of themes and topics. So I just want to thank Robert and Rachel for making such an amazing contribution to the field that I work in. But it's for that reason that I'm absolutely devastated not to be with you today. And I'm really sorry about that. But as someone, as I say, working and publishing in this area, I couldn't not take the chance to contribute to this discussion in some way. My chapter in this book is called Resisting Sin, Seeing Masculinities and Violence Through the Cross. And really briefly, it's taking the particularly contextual theology account of the cross, black womanist, feminist accounts of the cross, to show that the cross is the height of sin. It is an example of patriarchal violence that is done unto Jesus. And I look especially at the crucifixion narrative of Mark 15 and see how Jesus's body is passed around in various levels or layers of sin, from individuals to systems and structures to culture. Uh, and I start to ask what that looks like from our perspective as men and through the lens of masculinities. Now, a presumption in most of my work is that if you identify with masculinity or present as masculine or have a male body, if you resonate with masculinity in some way, you benefit in a patriarchal society. Now, don't get me wrong, there are complexities and intersections of identity that mean we can also be marginalized, we can also be pushed to the side and rendered less important, whether that's racialization, your sexuality, your ability or class, other things. But on the whole, in a patriarchal society, those who identify or present with masculinity in some way benefit. So my reading of the cross kind of takes that at its center and says, how can we read and theologize about the cross, taking seriously the violence done unto others, which we as men gain from and are complicit in? The cross is an example of gendered patriarchal violence. And so I encourage men to be allies and resist sin. The cross can be an image and an example of something we ought to get away from. We don't want people to be crucified. We don't want people to experience such patriarchal violence. So as men, it becomes our responsibility to resist that, to do something to stop that, and maybe to give up our power in order to make that happen. If you have read my chapter, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Maybe some of those have been shared today, but I hope it was helpful in re-understanding sin from the perspective of the powerful, if you like, because masculinity in our patriarchal society is an identification with power in some way. I was also asked to respond to another chapter, and I'm going to struggle to find it now, aren't I? Here we go. And one of the chapters that really stuck out for me as I read through this book is Simon Sutcliffe's chapter entitled Worship, Composting Male Epistemologies and Other Knowings. So I just want to talk for a couple of minutes on some of the things that really stuck out for me. One of my soapboxes when I write and teach and preach on these topics is that men, male and masculine theologians do not locate themselves enough. We so often talk about contextual theologies, and contextual theologians, their starting point often is their social location or the body from which their theology is produced, whether that is a queer body, a black body, a disabled body, and so on. But of course, all theology is contextual. My masculinity shapes the theology I produce. My male body and the way it is received and negotiated in power relationships shapes the theology that I do. We don't recognize that enough. It should be the responsibility of men and male and masculine theologians to locate themselves as well, not just to be considered normative. Simon's chapter is a fantastic example in this conversational, constructed conversation of self-criticism, of reflexivity, of recognizing what being a man does in terms of influence and impact on the way that we think, the way that we worship, the way that we do theology. So in such an informal and accessible way, this chapter offers a model, an example for how we think about the things that shape how we produce our theology, how we do what we do as Christians. But I think also this idea of composting, which I know Al Barrett and Simon Sutcliffe did some work in for the SCM Feminist Theologies Companion, and they're also writing a chapter on trauma and masculinities as composting for my edited collection. But the final few pages of Simon's chapter I find really helpful in terms of decomposing male epistemologies, and especially this quote near the end. I'm beginning to imagine the Eucharist as a moment where I, a man, consume Christ, born a man who in turn consumes me. That sense of compost, to be consumed and consuming, resonates with my sense of what is happening in Holy Communion. That is profound. That is an incredibly helpful lens through which to view masculinities, and a sacramental Eucharistic lens, which I find particularly fruitful and resonant too. As men, we have to be willing to give up our claim of truth, our claim to power, and be informed by other ways of thinking, other bodies. That's the really important thing about masculinities, or healthy masculinities, that we need to recognize that it's good to be shaped by other things. It's good to be provisional and unfinished and be in this composting cycle. So I just want to thank Simon for that, because particularly as someone who will be priested this year and come to preside over communion, that idea of masculinity being composted through the Eucharist has been incredibly academically, theologically and spiritually rich for me. So thank you. I really hope some of those rambles and thoughts on my own work in this chapter and in this book and on Simon's has been helpful today. I am really sorry I can't be with you, but I hope to hear some of your thoughts and reflections and the fruits of your day. Have an amazing time, and I hope to catch up with you and see some of you soon. Take care.